Hey, and welcome to another edition of the 2-Minute Warning. I'm your host, Perry Busby. The 2-Minute Warning is brought to you by the Westside Gazette. The Westside Gazette has been serving the South Florida area since 1971, African-American owned newspaper. And the publisher of the Westside Gazette is sitting next to me, my co-host, Mr. Bobby Henry. Bobby, how you doing, my brother?
I'm about to beat you up, man.
I know you are. Yeah.
How you doing, my brother?
Man, I'm doing good. All right.
I had the people out looking for you, man. They say you but you all right. Everything worked out as it's supposed to, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now I can calm down because the fellas on the street was saying, man, Perry got jammed up down there. So I was, he was talking about, getting people to vote and all kind, and they jammed him up on the corner. So I was kind of worried, man. You all right?
I'm doing fine, man.
Well, you gotta look at me. Let me see, man. I gotta make sure you're all right. So
okay.
See,
he got jokes tonight, ladies and gentlemen. But okay,
absolutely.
We got about 57 more minutes in, so you're all gonna hear the other side of the story.
Right on. We're on it, man. And Perry, seriously, I guess it's all in the headlines. It's everywhere. People talking about get out the vote, do this, do that, the need for it, and all of that. And I was even reading from the NNPA, and the coalition. It slips me right now, but they're talking about registering 10 million Black voters. There are 10 million across the country unregistered Black voters, and they're talking about the Justice Coalition. Am I saying it?
Yeah.
Okay. So they're talking about doing that, and then also the fact that we have several Black candidates across the country that are running for office, and the need to get those people elected. So it's some serious dialogue taking place, and we want to be a part of it. We don't want to offend anybody. Exactly. We just want to understand our role and what we need to do to make some things happen. So,
okay. Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I think that all of the effort toward getting individuals to participate in our election process is paramount. It's something I know that we say we've been doing, but the time now is critical, and and I think that we're at a critical point in our society when it comes to voting. Once again, we see voting on one hand under attack, primarily by Republicans, but then on the other hand, we sort of see a lackadaisical and sometimes ambivalent approach to African Americans until that critical moment in the election process that usually is maybe 6 weeks to 2 months away from the election. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so let's just be honest. I mean, we see it, we hear it in announcements. That is what we have been dealing with.
You and I, Perry, have engaged in some deep conversations, about even the disenfranchisement of Black voters. We got some action going outside the door. This is a live show, so we got something happening. So one of our producers had to step outside. If you can listen, you can hear the ambulance in the background, the police in the background. There's something going on. I apologize for that. We're in the city, and we're doing this live, so I do apologize. But you and I have been engaged in conversation about voting, period, and to the point how perhaps Black folk are disenfranchising Black folk, and we wonder, we ask the question, what is the reason you're not voting, or what's the reason are you voting? So.
Yeah, I think the questions vary. Yes, there's disenfranchisement among our voters by those who share our skin hue, as well as you know, uh, partial promises or promises not even attempted uh, by the party that many blacks claim to, if not hold allegiance to, at least provide the majority of their votes to.
Okay, so let me understand if I can. So the Democratic Party, of whom many black folk align themselves with, are not holding, are not coming through with what they promise.
Right. And I guess I should say that we all know that in politics, there is the demand. And, and again, I think that that's something that we have to address, that post civil rights and our thrust into voting, I'm not sure that we have done the due diligence to repeatedly, uh, pass that down. I mean, we understand, we talk about civics and class and, and what's not happening within our schools, but voting is a community, it's a house issue. And so what is happening? And I think that, a lot of times when we address this, the first thing, some people would like to do is dismiss it by, oh, they don't want to have anything, they don't like voting, or it's just something, and it's always just the people.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're looking at this, we've got a huge amount of people where it's just the people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I guess in my background, from where I come from, one of the things, that I tend to do is try to look at, well, what are some of the circumstances that's causing this action? And so, I began to toy around with an idea, and you and I talked about it, and I'm really so happy to lead the way into our discussion tonight, because it is it's an issue that is important to all of us, and that is our non-voting community. Mm-hmm. We ask them to vote. We attempt to go out there, and register, and we'll talk about some of the other issues, related to that. But I haven't really had an opportunity to hear from non-voters in terms of why they don't, and that number seems to grow, and that number tends to take on different looks. And so tonight we're going to start with this conversation, and I hope that we can continue it on, because I believe that there are a lot of people who aren't voting. Yes, there are a lot, but there are quite a few who aren't. And so what does that look like, and how do we confront, or how do we develop a strategy knowing that part of it? And so I want to begin to talk to some non-voters, as well as some people who are trying to engage voting but doesn't really understand voting. I think we have to open up these opportunities just for a dialogue, and I hope that all of you tonight will join us in this dialogue. And again, if you know of anyone, or if you don't vote, reach out to us, because we want to have dialogue. We're not here. I'm not proselytizing. I'm not trying to debate you on voting. I'm trying to understand and have a dialogue. And so I hope that, this will lead to some more fruitful conversation.
Absolutely, Perry, and I agree with you 100%. There was some breaking news that happened, and startled us for a moment. And what happened was there was a head-on collision right outside our door, right here in the hood on Sistrunk. There was a head-on collision. People are laying on the ground as we speak. The gentleman one of the suspects in this accident jumped out the car and left the scene running. And our producer saw the gentleman running. So that is what caught our attention and startled us for a moment. Wow, man. And let's just pray that these people who are, wow, we got footage too. I don't know if you can get it to area. You might can post it. I don't know. Okay, we'll leave that alone. We'll go on with the show. Yeah. Well, anyway.
Well, that's breaking news.
I'm telling you, man, but again, there's a lot in life that centers around our privilege or honor or duty, all right, to some. Okay. All right. If we can, we'll bring on our first guest. I want to just read something before we bring our first guest on. It says, every vote counts. The year of 2022 will prove to be a major test of the electability of Black statewide candidates as issues around voting rights, justice reforms confront the steady emergence of white supremacy in U.S. politics. With inflation becoming a bigger issue and the aftermath of COVID-19, many candidates will be running against strong headwinds. And some of those headwinds are those who have been disenfranchised for whatever reason. So if we can begin this conversation, I'd like to bring on our first guest, Shay McFarland. Shay has been on the program before and has a very interesting story. So if we can bring Shay on, and if Shay can give us a little background.
Hi, Bobby and Perry. So good to be back with you guys again. I'm in Atlanta today, and hopefully I'll be back down in South Florida very soon. But once again, thank you for having me, and I'm excited to talk about this subject because it affects me very personally. For those viewers that have not seen me before, I served 16 years in federal prison on a mortgage fraud charge. And I received executive clemency from President Trump on his last day in office. And, for all intents and purposes, I thought that freed me because they let me out of prison and I no longer, was bound. But that's not quite the case because then I became owned by the probation system, which I'm currently serving 5 years of probation, which prevents me from being able to vote, even though I'm working and I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. Because I'm still on probation, as a Georgia resident, I'm not able to vote. And most of the states, with the exception of 3 in this country, have some sort of limitation for the most part for people that are releasing from prison. So that is a big deal. One of the things I could tell you is that in the age of Google, if you don't know, look it up. You can look up every restaurant in the world and see what their menu is and make reservations, but you won't take the time to look up and see if whether or not you're able to vote or what the criteria in your state is. It's very important that you get to speak for yourself. And I think that's what voting means to me. It means that I have a voice that gets heard. And when I vote in a presidential election, I'm voting among millions of people. But when I vote on the school board, where my kids go to school, as far as who do I think is going to represent me and my values the best, then my vote does count, because sometimes those come down to 2 or 3 votes. So for people that say that their votes don't count, it depends on what election you're looking at. And also there's an issue of what I consider to be pandering to the Black community every time there's an election. Well, I tend to look at it like, well, what have you done for me lately? So just because you're a Black candidate or just because you're a Democratic candidate or a Republican candidate, I'm not necessarily going to vote for you if what you've done doesn't align with my views. I'm going to find who represents me, who's listening to me, whose office can I call when I have a problem, especially when it comes to criminal justice reform. You have a lot of elections uh, for your state court judges, superior court judges, and you wonder why your children are being sentenced so harshly and differently from the kids up in Boca or in Lighthouse Point. It's because of the judges that you're electing. So it really does come down to getting yourself to the poll.
Okay. Okay. Very, very good. All right. Our next guest, you want to go in alphabetical order? And, we got A1, we got Devon, we got David. Which way, where you want to go?
Well, we're talking about voting, so I mean, let's start with the non-voters first.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's bring. Okay. Our next guest is Mr. Devon Palmer. Devon has a very unique story in itself, and a position that he stands on. So, if you will, can you bring on Devon Palmer, please?
Hey, how you doing, Barry? Bobby and Perry. How y'all doing tonight? Well, my back end story is like this. I was in the streets all my life. I've been to college twice, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like I never cared about voting. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't never intertwined or even, like I said, cared about voting because I felt like it was like, why should I vote? Or why should I do this or why should I do that? And it's like I was like basically frizzle frazzled on it because you know how it is in the streets and around the world. Hey man, you be like, what can they do for us? They don't care about us. We out here in these streets. You know what I'm saying? So it's like short, like I'm keeping it short and simple. Like I never cared to vote. So as I got older, I realized, okay, maybe my vote will count. Or maybe I can make a change because I done ran into so many, like she said, I ran into so many judges and they were so harsh on me and they never cared. So I always wanted to vote, but I was like, with social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, it's like they give it a bad taste in your mouth. It's like I'm not going with the government. And politics are very messy. I'm like, man, I don't care about that. But I realize that we're in a crisis mode right now. You know what I'm saying? With our people. And I ain't even gonna say with our people, with everybody as us as human beings, we need to get out that stance. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like I want to vote and I want to get my rights restored, but it's like it's kind of challenging because it's like nobody. It seems like to me in my world, I feel like nobody wants to help, and I would love to like suggest like with people that can vote, like Bobby, Perry, get a group of people and show us the way. You know what I'm saying? Like how can show us how to get our rights restored. You know what I'm saying? Because I really want to vote because I got kids. I want their future to be better. You know what I'm saying? When it comes down to that point.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Great.
All right. You want to introduce A1?
Yeah. Okay. Our next guest, as Devon was mentioning, is a young man who I encountered, and we never talked about voting, but we began to have a dialogue about it, and he began to share his story with me. And he's a true entrepreneur, an advocate in his community. But just like Devon and I think many others, he's coming on tonight to help us understand as well as sort of help himself understand where voting fits in their world, and how can they make it work, not just see it work through others, but to see it work for themselves. And so I want to introduce Mr. Aaron Hollis, better known as A1.
How you doing, Brother Henry, Brother Perry? How y'all doing?
Very well,
right.
thank you.
Oh, well, a little bit about me. I'm a Hollywood resident. I'm the founder of Kids Always First. I'm an advocate for mental health and suicide. Like Brother Devon, I'm from the streets. I've been to college twice, if you know what I mean. But when it comes to voting, for me as a child, right, I saw my dad is 42 years older than me. So as a kid, I saw my dad going down to the precinct to vote. But as I became a teenager, I wondered how would voting work for me, because I became more exposed to the streets, right? And then being affected by suicide, right? That kind of opened my mind to like kind of get out of the streets. So by that happening, I was lucky to be a part of Amendment 4. I campaigned on that Amendment 4, and I kind of campaigned on the Tammy Jackson Act. I want to say I think I saw voting work, right, because I was on those campaigns, and I actually spoke and advocated real heavy for returning citizens when it came to Amendment 4. So I do have my voters' rights back. I have voted on about 4 or 5 elections, locally, presidential. Now I'm waiting on this.
We got some technical issues.
Yeah, you hung up.
Okay. While we try to get that worked out, let's bring on our next guest. Our next guest is Brother David Wright. David is an entrepreneur. He is a community act. You back with us, A1?
Oh yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
Okay.
Okay. You want to go ahead and finish?
I don't know where I left off, but again, I think I saw voting work, right, because I campaigned on Amendment 4, and I was lucky enough to get my voters right back. So now I'm able to vote. I did vote on this past presidential election. I voted for my local commissioner. But in reality, I really want to see how voting works, and does it really work? I'm just torn, especially right now, because I'm unsure on who to vote for when I see like 7 candidates in one position and fighting for one seat and everybody black. It kind of gives me a space to who to vote for when that seat's going to be up for grabs, because there's so many black people. What do? Go with the best black person? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? So this is the thing that kind of makes me torn about voting. And we don't have any voters education. Like, we only get told to vote, to register vote, but we don't have any voter education saying, hey, this is how you exercise your vote, right? So I guess that's why I'm like, I have mixed signals. But just because I saw my dad going to vote as a kid, I make it my business to take my kids down to the ballot and we vote. We get our voting stickers. So.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay, cool. Our next guest, Brother David Wright. David is an entrepreneur and a community activist and involved with several organizations. We had a conversation earlier, and David enlightened me to his position and change of position and the like as it deals with voting. So if we can bring Brother David Wright on, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, young
Good evening,
Malcolm.
Brother David.
My story is a little different. I grew up in the midst of the civil rights movement, born in the late 50s, growing up in the 60s. I got a chance to see And what's the old saying, being told kind of what to do and what you're going to do. It was so paramount to our culture at that time that we had really just gotten the right to vote, that we wasn't going to squander that. So I went through that phase of doing it just out of loyalty to the culture at that time. But as I got older, my thought process changed. I saw a lot of things going on, and I felt like we were being used by certain parties, and that we weren't, even though we were voting, there were some things that we couldn't control. Um, and I felt like I should no longer give my allegiance to certain parties because they're not doing anything for us. So that had me torn for a while, where I didn't vote and didn't participate in the process until some wise people told me once. They said, well, when the policemen are arresting you, that's the process. You're being utilized by that process. If you didn't use your voice to vote to put the right people in office to correct these type of situations, you're just adding to the process. You're not using your voice as a solution. Once I began to own property and understand the importance of knowing who my local city commissioners and council people were, that had a lot to do with who and how I could buy property and what my taxes would look like and all of that, I really begin to understand now how I need to utilize my voice and be aware of who we're putting in office, and whether or not they're benefiting our cause, my community, my constituents, my family, and people that look like us. So I've had a variety of different areas and ways to look at this voting process. Since the 90s, I've been an avid voter. I encourage voter education. Uh, Getting the information is so important to making the right decision as to what person we believe has our best interest. And I really want to hear the rest of this dialogue, and I really can't wait to interject with a lot of the responses I've heard from the panel. And kudos to everybody on the panel, y'all.
Okay, good. Thank you. We initially we want people to understand that this is not chastisement or browbeating or to castigate or make anybody feel any different about what they believe when it comes to voting. We want to have a conversation, and Devon, if I could ask you, uh, um, what is it, or what was it that prevented you from voting?
Well, what prevented me from voting was, I hate to say it, I was just engulfed by the streets. You know what I'm saying? I was catching so many charges. I was going to college, playing around. I didn't take it seriously. Like I said, I never cared. And I never had the resources or, what I'm saying, the outlet to go to vote. You know what I'm saying? Nobody showed me the way. You know what I'm saying? That's why I suggested, a couple of the good guys or the people that can vote show us the way and basically give us information or educate us on voting and wake us up to the point of like, hey, we need to go ahead and make our voice count, even when it's locally or nationally or even like a presidential. You know what I'm saying?
The, we hear so many times that young folk
It appears we're having some technical difficulties. It looks like we're still streaming live. So, Devon, if you want to continue your thought, go right ahead.
Oh, like I said, well, you know what I'm saying? Like I say, color is not even in the place of this situation. I just feel like we in crisis mode, and it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, I want to get out and vote, and you know, I might have a lot of candidates I might like, because I'm not just gonna get out and vote. You know what I'm saying? I want to research the people. You know what I'm saying? I want to know what they stand for, what their beliefs is, and et cetera, et cetera. But it's like I say, we don't have the groups or the people to show us the way. And I'm not against Republicans or Democrats. I just want to know what you're talking about to make my future better, and basically make my kids' future better. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And to that, and I understand what you're saying, Devon. And to that, some people may say, well, it is out there, and those things are available, and we are doing anything. And so we know that two things can be both somewhat right. How, as you're saying that, how do you propose we begin to reach someone like you? What are some of the best ways? I mean, you know, it used to be just mail, but how do we do this now?
Yeah, you know, right now, mail, paper that's out the window right now. You know, that's spoiled milk. And that's a great way to reach the people, but it's like, you know what time we in right now. You know, it's social media. We're in a digital age. And I know with social media, they somewhat be against like pressuring people to vote on social media, but like we need Facebook pages, we need Instagram pages, you know, and unfortunately, you know, us as a culture, we don't like to put it in the hip hop stance, like, but we needed to circulate everywhere like a newspaper. We need to circulate it, man, because like I said, again, I gotta keep emphasizing we're in crisis mode. You see what's going on with the abortion and even the little crazy laws, like you can't play loud music 25 feet and all that other crap. It's insane. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, a lot of those rules won't be set in, or laws will be set in place if, basically, like I said, if people go out and vote. Like people like me, felons and people that got out of jail. And I understand, like, you know, there's a lot of states are trying to give back the people, the votes for people, or, you know what I'm saying, trying to get them back in the game. Even some people, they debating right now, like, should we let the people in jail while they incarcerated right now? Should we let them vote? So I know it's a battle, you know what I'm saying, but it's a battle that I don't know how to fight, and I don't know how to approach it. Because I love to stand for my people, because I said, like I said from the beginning, it's all about the kids. It's all about the future. We old. It ain't nothing wrong with being old, but it's all about the kids, because they gonna be the new.
We know there's nothing wrong with being old. We understand that.
No, I'm saying, look, it's all about the kids. The kids are our future. They the ones that be running this world when we go on.
Okay, you said something right there. You said the kids are our future. You know, when we have kids, well, when we have young folk, Gen X or Gen W, whatever term that they use to identify themselves in that age bracket, when they are saying, you know, we don't vote, you know, they're actually saying that we do not vote. Mm-hmm. A1, how do we get to somebody, like, how do we reach that group? How do we reach those? And these are supposed to be some kids that are in college, some intelligent people, some supposed to be, you know. So mm-hmm. how do we get to them, A1? Turn your mic on.
I think one of the things we have to do is like go back to the old-fashioned way. We got to get to know our neighbors. Like we growing up, like we growing up in a time where social media running everything, and it was once upon a time like our Black community, like we were really connected. And I know social media like got its thing going on, but we still need to like get on the ground. We need to get in our schools. Like we need to be active all the way around our schools, our homes, our churches. Like, I mean, that's bottom line. Like me, because I'm out here in the streets. You know what I'm saying? So I'm willing to, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm going to the car shows and all, where all the hood, the dudes, the dope boys, and everything at, man. You feel me? Because them boys can vote too.
Mhm.
I was in that situation before, you know what I'm saying? Granted, I don't grow from the streets and stuff like that, but I still go to car shows. You know what I'm saying? I might step in a bar or something. I might see a couple brothers that I know. I think we need to really go back to our like roots, like, and still stay connected with our community.
Right. And that raises a point because one of the largest demographics of non-voters is Black males, 18, I think, to 45, they said. And again, to you, A1, you had, as well as you, David, both of you all had an opportunity where you weren't voting. And now that you are voting, does it seem as though there's any more acceptance or invitation to be a part of this, or has there been no difference at all? I mean, just that because both of you are active in some ways, but has the participation in terms of the process been as inviting?
You know, I'll go ahead and take that one, Brother Busby. You know, all politics, in my opinion, start locally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you know, it's our immediate community that our concern should be mostly concerned about, and and these are people that should be tangible, that we can see at the store, touch, know them from church, have seen them around town, and know a little bit about their reputation and what they're doing in the community. Always challenge politicians. You know, when they call your name, what are they associated with? What is it? Is it positive? You know, is it restoring rights? Is it supporting our kids or our schools? You know, who are you, and why do you deserve my vote? So, you know, the education piece behind being engaged helps me to now feel more confident that when I do cast my vote, it is legit for a legitimate candidate, you know, and from there, you know, I do feel some satisfaction, win or lose.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of times good people get knocked out of the race early because maybe their strategy wasn't on point, or they just didn't reach the people. Like Devon was saying, you know, if a candidate ain't willing to go in the streets, ride the buses, and talk to those people, his true base, the people that look like him, that's gonna vote for him, that he need to hear from them to hear what their needs are, and put that in his notebook or part of his agenda, that these are some of the things we're going to address or work on, and have a strategy, knowing how the system works and how we're going to get this resolved, you know, have a plan and can explain their plan and work with others to get their plan successfully processed. Those are the type of people that I feel these are the strategies and the structure that I feel should motivate us to vote, especially when we know these type of individuals.
Shay, when it comes to formulating a message, who, where does this message fall short? Who, yeah, where does this message fall short? Your time inside, um, did did the message resonate from the inside, or where does the message fall short at? I'm trying to understand this.
I think the message falls short on the outside, because when you're on the inside, you have time to research about your judge and how many people they sentenced and who they didn't sentence, and you get to talk to everyone about it. Just to share a story that's a great example of how this all works. When I was indicted and sentenced to 30 years in federal prison in 2005, I wrote just about every member of Congress that I could think of to tell them about the injustice that was done to me. And uh, no one responded except for the congresswoman from Jacksonville, who I wasn't even in her district, Corrine Brown. Fast forward to 2020 when I was transferred to Coleman, which is in the Orlando area, to the camp there. Lo and behold, I found out that Corrine had been indicted herself and was serving time for allegedly a fraud with a nonprofit. And so I met her and I told her, I said, you will never understand how, even though you could not help me, the fact that you took the time to respond to me and just to encourage me to keep fighting, that let me know. I said, and so now that you're here, what can I do for you? And as it turned out, Corrine's sentence was ultimately overturned by the Florida Supreme Court, and she was immediately released from custody. Well, the government wasn't happy about it, so they in turn decided that they were going to try her again, even though her case had been thrown out the first time. And so, to prevent that, because she is 70 years old, she decided to plead to one count involving failure to file taxes. And so, she is still a felon. However, she did certify to run for Congress again for this election that's coming up in August for the district that now runs from Jacksonville down to Orlando. And it's a very big possibility that we can have a congresswoman who is a convicted felon. I mean, you look at Corrine, she served 24 years and she's basically responsible for all the development that happened between Jacksonville and Orlando with the whole I-4 corridor, with the FAMU law school. The lady has, done so much for the community, but are we supporting her now? Because she supported us. And even though I am now working in another state, I can't vote for her, but I can contribute to her campaign because it's money that makes the wheels go around. And what happens is you have these candidates that may look like me skin tone wise, but they're bought and paid for by big political action committees that come in and say, well, we'll help you get elected provided that you go along to get along when we want something. Those are not the kind of people that we want in office. And we see it. Those of us that have ever been in the street know what the hustle is about. And politics is just on a different forum. It's the same thing. And so you have to research what's going on with people. What are they doing? Are they telling you one thing and then doing something different? Do they return your phone calls? Do they come to the community forums? If you have an issue, they may not be able to call you personally, but someone on their staff should be able to call and find out what's going on. Particularly with the police, the sheriff and other officials are elected. Is there someone there, the community liaison officer, that's able to talk about what's going on in your community or things that you see? For instance, you talked about the accident that just happened right in front of your newspaper. And is there someone that you could call tomorrow and ask questions and feel better about how the situation was handled? If no one will talk to you, then that's something to think about the next time that sheriff comes up for office or that police chief comes up for office. And they can no longer live in ivory white towers where they don't get to talk to the people. We have voices, and our voices have to matter other than when we're marching in the street because they just shot one of our kids 60 times. I mean, and the other thing is about connectivity. It doesn't matter that you're in Fort Lauderdale, I'm in Atlanta, other people that are watching. We are global now, and that makes us a force to be reckoned with because we can mobilize and we can support each other, and we can help with campaigns and organizing. So it's about what's going on the outside where we're falling short, Bobby.
Okay. You bring up some very interesting points. I want to read a couple of comments from some of our listeners. First of all, Miss McCleary, she said, "Thank you, because Broward listens." And what she's, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but we do here in Broward. We do listen. We do, and we try our best to understand so we can address some of those issues. And another listener viewer says, Mr. Robinson, Looney Robinson, he says it's every citizen's responsibility to learn how the government works. And it starts in civic classes, education, civic duty, and seeking knowledge about voting. The voting process takes a collective effort, beginning at home, school, church, community, and personal initiatives. That leads us to. I want to go back to you, Brother Wright. You know, uh, excuse me. I want to go back to you. We had an earlier conversation. Now, and you skirted around. Yeah, you skirted around the party. Let's and we need to not not putting anybody on the spot, but we need to hold our parties accountable. You know, what in your view, in your understanding, what has the Democratic Party, since the majority of black folk are supposedly Democrats, what has the Democratic Party done for black folk lately? And has that lately included educating Devon and A1 and others on the need, or understanding their need, why they do or why they don't vote?
Bobby, if we could convict them on doing that, I think they'd get a pass. They wouldn't even get convicted for telling the truth, supporting, the constituents, the black community that basically has been their voting base. Um, you know, for a long time, when we go back to the turn of the century and, in the 1800s, primarily once blacks were able to vote, they supported the Republican Party. They were a party of Lincoln until things changed. They felt they were getting somewhere at some point, but then things changed and we became heavily Democratic Party. In my opinion, only to be overlooked or taken advantage of, pimped, as some of us would say, and and it's discouraging. But for some of us, we do know not participating in the system, not utilizing your voice is just as bad. Malcolm X, back in the 1964, did a speech called The Ballot of the Bullet. And he talked more strategically about how we should use that ballot and how deadly it was and how we should use it as a bullet and aim for that target that we're trying to hit. I encourage anyone to go back and revisit his speech and look at some of the strategies, because he, as Brother Devon talked about, he totally taught us against stockpiling 7, 8 black people running against each other. That can be totally confusing. Why can't we come up with just the two best candidates? And why can't candidates have dialogue so that they don't dilute and confuse their community? But we've really created, I believe, what's called a free for all in this whole local political scheme of things, and it's not benefiting our community. We've had some great success here in South Florida with putting people of color in power, putting them in positions. But I'm deeply concerned moving forward on how we mess this up, and what the backlash of any type of success looks like in America. Because I tell you, America's not fond of us doing good things and outshining people that don't look like us. There's usually a backlash, and we need to prepare ourselves.
Yeah. Devon, you touched on something earlier, and we all know that social media plays a big part in getting messages out. Um, you and A1, in terms of what you see in that's considered political speak on your timelines, would you say is more positive or is more to keep you? Is there more uh, of a question of why, or just a question of disengagement? What seems to be the message that predominates on your timelines? Devon, you on okay.
I'm on mute.
Yeah. Okay, you're there.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna keep it short and simple. It's like this. Like on my timeline, basically, I'm on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on not on Facebook, but on my timeline, they don't speak on nothing. Everything that's political or even about voting, it like I say, it leaves a nasty taste in your mouth. They never speak on that. When they do speak on it, it's negative. It's not positive. You know what I'm saying? And I want to touch on this, like I said about the groups, about the people helping the felons or the people who've been in prison. I feel like the same way we have OGs and other people, gangsters, they'll come and show you how to sell dope. They'll come and show you how to break in the car, rob, steal, even kill. But we don't, like I said, we don't have no OGs to come and be like, hey, what's up? Devon, hey, I want to show you how to vote. Come to the podium or the thing, what you got to do to vote. We don't have that in the community. And on social media, like I said, it's not a good, they don't leave a good taste in your mouth. They always bashing the people that basically the politics and the government. Nobody don't show you the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A1.
One thing I see on my timeline, I mean, from politicians, there's no voter education. I mean, you know, they might post something about what's going on in the community or event or housing development or some situation about that, but it's no voter education. And like Bruh said, it ain't nobody really to go into the community. We don't like, especially we understand our people grow from situations. We understand like our people grow out of the hood, right? But the thing is, like, you have to like go and come back. You know what I'm saying? Like the each one teach one. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that's why I thank like God for my community partner, right? She's the one who opened my mind. Mona Lisa, she opened my mind to actually want more. She actually invited me to Orlando, whatever, having a Amendment 4 conference and information about Amendment 4. And I was on that campaign. So that kind of opened my mind to a whole different level of voting. When I got my voters' rights back, it was like, man, I saw my dad vote, so let me go and vote. But my thing now is like, I guess I'm so focused on the ownership because I know it was just more than like, I'm really looking for those black politicians to like, right, take us to the next level. We see you grow from our community. We see you in the churches, but we don't see you like on an avenue where our kids are at. Sadly, our kids in the neighborhood, they're getting boxed out of the community centers because other kids are leasing those spots, and then it puts our kids on the street. But we don't see any politicians of our color like really in those streets where they came from, other than probably going to church or, you know what I'm saying, some other destination that they're supposed to go to, and they go right there and they come out. So, I mean, other than me like really wanting to voter education because I saw really what it did for Amendment 4, and I'm glad I was a part of that. And then I got a chance to be a part of the Tammy Jackson Act. So that gives me hope when it comes to voting. But again, like somebody touched on the black politicians like kind of stockpiling one seat. That's why I get confused at, and I'm like, man, I don't even want to exercise my vote because who do I choose? I'm letting the seat go like up for grabs by like kind of choosing somebody. So I mean, when I saw a situation like that in a race that I was actually supposed to vote in, I kind of stepped out of because I didn't want to like really identify this person as being the best black, or it leaves you in a confusing state of mind, especially when you're not from this side of town, right? I didn't grow up in the corporate sense and my mom giving me voter education. I only saw my dad just go down to the precinct, but he didn't speak of it. Only because how old he was, I know how important voting was to black people. And just in knowing like towns about Rosewood, Eatonville, Black Wall Street, Okui, Titusville, just knowing different spaces when the kind of vote centered around trouble for the black people, it intrigued me to want more out of the vote, right? That's why I want education. Because when I look back and I see the vote had to be so powerful for black people in this manner because they were treated this way. Why was the vote so powerful that, black people would have to suffer those type of consequences? I need the education so I can exercise my vote the right way. Not saying that I want that type of treatment, but I mean, they were doing something right. They had to be. So, I mean, I don't know, but I do want more voter education versus events that's going to be happening because of political kickoff coming about. We need education so we can get to those kickoffs. Because I see people like where I'm from, they're not as open-minded as I've become, right? So they're not going to be in the spaces that I'm in. So most times you hear me going back to the hood talking about what I've been exposed to. Most people be like, man, I don't want to hear that, man. You know what I'm saying? But if it was more of me, you know what I'm saying, going into those spaces, and we can see a collective, I think it'll work.
There's some interesting dichotomy of points of views here, and Shay, you said earlier, from the inside, institutionalized, affords you the opportunity to really do some research. So have you ever thought about forming that coalition with those on the inside to do the research necessary to bring it out to the outside so we can bring it to Devon and A1 from the real point?
Well, unfortunately, it's difficult to work in real time on the inside because you have so many barriers where you're not able to, you don't have computers where you can research. Everything is still by paper for the most part. But one thing I would suggest, going back to the and David, you probably can agree with me on this, our powerhouses back in the 60s and 70s was our black press. And so I would suggest that the Westside Gazette, you guys host community forums where you've got multiple candidates. Invite them. It can be on Zoom and let everyone tune in, and you guys ask the questions, and people can tune in. They can look at the recording and they can see how did they answer. There's so many things, and what happens, you have to be aware of what's going on around the country, because one of the things is that policy copies policy. I work in policy and legislation in a lot of different states, and what they do is they take a bill that may start in Missouri and then they change it around a little bit. It makes it to Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida. And so one of the things that I saw last week, and I had to laugh, is that there is a push to take the word slavery out of the history books and call it involuntary relocation.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then they're always talking about CRT. That's a big thing with school boards, with the critical race theory. Well, I don't care if it's taught in school or not, because it's taught in my home. And to all the young people that I know, you will know the truth about what was done to you. So I think a lot of times we try to put off on politicians and our educators and our elected officials duties that really fall on us. It's up to us to educate ourselves. And so it's important that they have resources. And if you read the Westside Gazette, you're going to know what's going on. And like I said, if you guys host, I'll be glad to come down and moderate if you want to do it. But host community forums where people can get the knowledge and ask the questions. You could do a whole show where people just ask questions, and then you can go to the politicians and get the answers and publish them, because that's the thing. And then the issue is, are you going to do and align with what you said before you got elected? We see all the way to the Supreme Court where Roe versus Wade, they all sat there before Congress and said, no, I won't overturn Roe v. Wade. And as soon as they got enough votes, they did it. So what happens then? So you have to hold our elected officials accountable for what they do. And you also have to, do your research on your people. And if you don't like it, run yourself. And if you find a candidate that's good that you like, blast them out. Put them on your social media that they should check out this particular person. But it's up to us to be able to educate and stay aware of what's going on. It's our responsibility. It's an individual responsibility. It's a familial responsibility. And it's just so important to our communities because it starts in our houses and it expands out.
And Shay, you're absolutely right. The black press has been the backbone for this information for over 195 years.
Yes.
Not only that, the black church, but now some of that has kind of gone away. They're not as a big influence for our younger generation. And for that reason, we got to take it to the streets. We got to take it to the social media. We got to create these platforms that are inviting to all age groups and educating to the point where they understand they have a voice. Now, social media has been, so many of our young people's voice, but they got a voice at the ballot. And that's the voice that they need to understand that it's equally important. It's equally important as a selfie, as your profile, as everything else you post. You should be posting at the ballot as well, because it serves this entire community, not just an individual, but it's for the community.
Okay. If Ariel, if you would, and then let's just show this video, this 1 minute video, and then we're gonna come back and I know we're gonna wrap it up a little bit, but.
On March 7th, 1965, a group of protesters gathered at the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, calling for voting rights, with 25-year-old John Lewis leading the way.
We intend to march to Montgomery.
It was the first in a series of planned marches from Selma to Montgomery.
Often what you saw in the Deep South, that people were not even allowed to register to vote. That when they went to register to vote, would walk up and the registrar would say, in order to register, you have to tell me how many jelly beans are in a jar. Or just some ridiculous questions that they would ask them as a tool to prevent them from being able to register. It was in August the 6th, 1965, where the Voting Rights Act was passed. And it was passed because of the work of those folks on the Edmund Pettus Bridge and the work all of those years that activists had been doing to demand the right to vote.
Wow. Just a reminder, we've come a long way, but we still got a mighty long way to go. So,
yeah. But A1 and Devin, you all raised the interesting point that, David, I sort of saw your eyes twinkle when they said, what kind of response that they're getting. And I hope that any groups or politicians out there who always talking about we just need to get on social media understand it's not reaching some intended audience. It is in some ways deliberate. I don't know if you sort of remember, but remember when the rapper Yellow Man came out with his rap about voting? Remember the rapper came out a couple years ago called Yellow Man to help people?
Yeah, the one that was walking down the sidewalk.
Right. Yeah. The exact same day that video came out, conservatives hit predominantly Black social media with several equal posts, not even addressing what he was saying, but just to bring, as Devon say, a negative view about voting. And so, David, I know you're at the front end. What are some of the ways that you think we can begin to help confront, this that's happening on the social side, on the social media side?
Well, it starts, Brother Perry. I'm glad you asked that question. It starts with just being intentional. How do we connect with people? How do we connect with our own people and our own young people, some even within our household and within our community? And if we're distancing ourselves from them, then we have a rude awakening. We got to figure out and keep the connection there. And let's just be real about it. Yeah, it may feel uncomfortable, but we have to become comfortable being uncomfortable until we can build these type of relationships and build and work with the technology and the methods of communication. For some of us, we can no longer allow technology to be our divide with getting the word out. So we have to be aggressive about that, understanding the proper means to getting to where the voices and where the people need to hear these messages. And the messaging, as Sister Shay said, has to be done in a way where it lands on, fertile ears. We want them to be able to hear it and get something out of it, feel it, let it be impactful. Uh, and I think that's where we really need to start. And I think it's a combination of things. Our young people are very wise as well. And if we get their buy-in, they can support this whole effort with the messaging. We've heard certain rappers in the past, Common, and you're gonna hear a whole lot of names of people that have come out that are positive when it comes to the messaging. And I think it's important. And even those artists that we haven't even heard of yet that may have an impact on their peers. We need to use and look at every possible strategy possible. And it has to be focused. It has to be laser beam focused to the truth, to the message. You have a voice until they take it away.
Yeah.
It was like the old saying George Clinton said, think it ain't illegal yet.
Yeah.
Good point.
Well, in politics, the perception and what people see, goes a long way. Do you think that in terms of, and I hate to really just start talking about either of these parties, but do you get a sense that a lack of the urgency on voters may be that they don't see a fight from the side that they are supposedly supporting? Shay?
Well, you may not see it, but at some point, somebody's going to make the decision for you. So,
Right.
would you like to be heard or not? Because, it's almost kind of childish, like I'm going to pick up my toys and go home type philosophy. They don't care. They're going to make the decision. If you don't want to vote, then that's fine with them because they're going to get the votes anyway. And even like with me, I'm disenfranchised for the next few years, but that's okay because I will load up my car with other people and drive them to the polls. So
Yep,
whereas
yep,
if I
yep,
could
yep,
vote,
yep.
they probably would have
Yes.
just gotten my one vote because I would have just gone when I got off work. But because they tell me that I can't vote, I'm gonna run that little Honda a whole tank of gas that day if that's what it takes.
Right.
Um, to get people there and to encourage people to come out and vote. I'm traveling all over the state of Georgia now talking about voter suppression and getting people to register, and if you can't vote, you can still be a watcher at the polls and observe and make sure that things are going the way that they're supposed to. Some states had things like where you couldn't pass out water to people, but if you live in the South and it's 100 degrees while you're standing waiting, what's wrong with passing out water? And so they tried to make that illegal, and then that there's just so many obstacles that are always placed in front of us. But one thing about us, they say we make the best track stars because we can run, jump, hurdle. That goes with life too. We are a very resilient people, and we just have to come together because that's where we find our strengths. And we have to talk and dialogue and explain what's important to us, and and move forward. And the one thing that I can say that God blessed me with is the ability to talk and be a mouthpiece. And I am just, I did it while I was in prison. to the point that the administration was so happy to see me leave. And now I still go back and monitor and talk to it. You just gave me more things to do since I'm out here. But you know, it's just about us all talking and encouraging and letting people know what's going on. We can gossip about what's going on reality TV. We'll tell them what's going on at the polls as well.
Okay. Yeah, I want to read some. If you can bring up the comment from Meredith McCleary. And Meredith, see what she says. I think we and media need to expose those who have and are lying about what they are doing and promising young people, and see. Let's see, young people know and see you. That's what she's saying. Those politicians who are lying, young people know and see you. I don't trust them, and neither will do the young people. Get involved and go. What's that last one? Go Shay.
Yeah.
Go Shay. Very good. All right, that's a good point for us. And we to segue to ending the program and not the session.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we could, let's give our closing thoughts. Okay. And that thought would be what, Perry?
See,
that
you
thought
gonna start always and end up, okay.
that thought would be, okay, how do we encourage, not persuade, but to encourage those who may have a difference of opinion about voting than we do to get involved? And let's see, let's start with who you want to start? Let's start with David.
You know, you guys have really posed a tough question. There have been many things that have been tried, and we want to make sure whatever we suggest is legal. But it's honest conversation. We don't know our history and remember our history and apply our history. We're doomed to repeat it. So we have to know that if it's anything that folks are trying to take away from Black folks, it's got to be worth having, and that's our right to vote. And we've seen what happened with Roe versus Wade. Well, there's a possibility our voting rights may be on the chopping block real soon. So we have to share knowledge, share history, and then share the importance of utilizing your voice. And if you don't say anything, then you're pretty much stand for anything. If you don't stand for anything, we're subject to this being disenfranchised. That's what we're seeing now. But I want to applaud Devon and A1 because you guys have opportunities to continue to help and motivate others. And A1, you've had some victories, so I think it's important that you share that and let people know there's some winning still to be done out here. And thank you guys for letting me share.
Okay.
Sure.
Who you want to go with?
Yeah.
Shay?
Yeah.
I would just leave with the thought that we need to stay connected, and just know that we're not in this fight alone, because individually we can't do anything, but together we're unstoppable. And so whatever deficiency that you feel that you have, there's someone else that can make up the difference. And it's just important in knowing what resources we have available. If you're not getting the resources that you feel that you need, let someone know, because there's someone that can help you get what you need. And I just think that's just very important when it comes to voter education and with connecting for services in our communities and with monitoring our politicians to make sure that they're on point with what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay. A1?
Well, I'm gonna say for me, like one of the first off, I think that we got, right, as far as the culture. So we need to stand up, you know what I'm saying, and get back to what we once was. One of the things too, I want to say we need representation, and I'm speaking like as far as the black man, right? Like we need to see more representation of our brothers being connected from different genres, whatever, you know what I'm saying, different genres, different cities, different background, whatever it is. We need to see a connection, and we need to go into the streets and let those streets see that connection, because the streets, they so disconnected that from the streets to the elders to the school to every level of where you see a black man at, you have to go and get him. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, let's connect. You know what I'm saying? Us brothers need to be connected. We need to share each other's space, and we need to go into different spaces and kind of get some of our brothers out of certain situations. So I just want to like put that on the, you know what I'm saying, on the minds of, you know what I'm saying, us as black men and the black lady too. Yeah, we need our brothers, man, more than ever right now, because like we got our mind on different stuff. And once we become the solid like foundation that we was in the 60s, you know what I'm saying, to go after, to lead the pack, to go and do that, I think we'll like pick up where we left off at.
Devon, turn your mic on, Devon.
You hear me
There you
now?
go. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna keep it short and simple again. like A1 said, man, we need more people to come out and go to the different events and, you know, just put in the hard work. You know what I'm saying? We don't get nothing if we don't put in hard work. You gotta put in the hard work. And right now, like I said again, we are in crisis mode. It's more serious than what we think. Yeah, we light on it, but it's very, very serious. And we just need to put in the work. And I'm gonna go back on what Mr. I guess one of the people in the chat said, like, we need to go in schools and they need to learn it on themselves. It's their responsibility to learn themselves. But believe it or not, it's a lot of people not going to school. So guess what that points back to? The streets. You got to wake these people up, because right now they sleeping and they really don't care about it. They don't care about the laws and everything that's getting thrown at them until it comes at them. Then they be like, oh, woo, abortion, this, that, and the third. We just got to open our eyes to this crisis, because that's what it is right now, because they're going to end up taking everything for us. And then we're going to be sitting there crying.
Well, what a way to start out this conversation. Thank you, Shay and White and Devon and A1. I mean, just to sort of come full circle with what brought this conversation on for me, is I wanted to begin to see how, if I was in the shoes, how would I want someone to approach me? You know, knowing that I don't know anything about voting, but how do we approach people who are, you know, we have a good message, but somehow we don't communicate it in a cadence or in the framework within which they understand. And, you know, and as you begin to see this in our voting, yes, getting out the vote is one thing, but understand, when you ask someone who hasn't voted ever, that now they have some newfound power. What do I do with this? And I venture to say that it's just not new voters. We have some experienced voters. And what I think we need to really understand as we engage in this moment is to get a better understanding about voting. Elections are really just a ticket into the game. The real work starts after elections and keeping those people, those elected officials accountable on everything. The election is just the one day in which we get to just shout, and that's it. But we got to come beyond this catharsis because this game is changing. And Bobby, you and I was talking today. Said I just feel like we're in some different fights because I'm all for fighting for democracy. And that's a fight worth fighting for, but the other side is fighting for power. And those are two different fights. And if we're going to encourage some people, they need to see us fighting the right fight and not just talking strong talk. Because as these young men said, they're on the streets. They see some things I'll be willing to say I've never seen in my life and don't want to see. So how do I address it? Because these are my entry points into that. And I'm just saying, if we really want to begin to do this, we have to do as Shay say. And as Brother David says, we have to extend ourselves beyond ourselves to talk in a new dialect to get these young people. I truly believe that they want to hear from us, but they want to hear something truthful and not just our rhetoric.
Well, man, you said a lot. And some of the comments, before I start, speak here, can we put up A1's information, Shay's information, because Shay's and everybody everybody is willing to help where they can. And Miss McCleary, your slogan of staying woke, here's an opportunity for us to pull this together. David, you see, everybody is willing. So here are the grassroots efforts. Here are those who folk perhaps don't want to listen to, but gotta listen to, and we have to make them listen to them. And Shay, did your information come across the screen? Because you're willing to help. Aaron, A1, you're willing to help. I want to say this. The Black press of America is 195 years old. Started with a preacher and a businessman. Freedom's Journal, that was the first newspaper. The Black press and the oh Lord, what's that coalition? Lord, give me 1 second. And this coalition are coming together to oh man, what's that? God,
The Justice?
Yeah, the Justice Coalition. The Justice Coalition to come together to register 10 million voters. There are 10 million unregistered Black voters out there to bring this voice together. My comments or my sentiments are centered around those brothers and sisters who are incarcerated. Those are voices and those are workers that can be used to get the information out, to do the research, to help carry this load. We are all in this fight together. And if we don't use all of our resources, we're going to find ourselves in a place where white supremacy will have their feet on our necks and to keep us down. That's Black, brown, and anybody who don't look like what they perceive America should look like. So we have to find a way to join our voices, Devon, A1, Shay, David, that whole spectrum to come together and do what's necessary for us to get on the page, of calling folk out, to get on the page of holding people accountable, to get on the page of those who wish to disenfranchise us, no matter what hue their skin tone may be, but to hold them accountable. And maybe then Generation Z, Y, or X might find or see the significance of what it means to come together, to hold people accountable, so we can at least have some form or semblance of what freedom looks like. So I say thank you to everyone who engaged in this discussion. We will continue this discussion. We will continue this discussion. And those who are vying for office, Val Demings, Nikki Freed, if you want to do the local things, to have you on the show so our listeners can learn and see what it means to engage in this process. So I say thank you to everyone, and let's continue to move forward.
And I want to say thank you to a special listener who reached out to me, my granddaughter, Aubrey, who is listening. We have to start them young. So thank you for listening, Aubrey. And join us next week. And again, if you're listening and if you know someone who isn't a voter, or someone who has some opinion on this subject, please, we want to open up this dialogue. There are more voices needed. And to be frank with you, we may not need every person voting. We need some folk to do some other strategic things related to this process around voting. And those are the things I think that we need to look at. Republicans don't have votes, but yet they are making legislation to fit their needs. When you look at Roe v. Wade, that was a 30-year project or 50-year project.
Yeah, more like, yeah.
And so, again, we have to give if we're saying we're going to pass batons and we're going to leave a legacy, we got to leave a legacy that points towards something and not always something that always reminiscent about what we were.
Right, and I can't blame anybody for bringing their A game to the game.
Right.
Now we got to bring our A game to the game. So let's not get it twisted.
Yeah.
You can do what you want to do, but God damn it, I'm gonna do what I have to do. And so, and we got to stop playing around with this. I'm not faulting you for doing what you do, but I got to do what I got to do.
Right.
So.
And on that note, good night.
Good night. Before we get crunk up again.
Thank you.